So I'd like to take a moment to introduce our special guest. Lucy Score is an instant, when I say instant New York Times best-selling author. She grew up in a literary family who insisted that the dinner table was for reading, and I totally love that. She earned her degree in journalism. She writes full time from her home in Pennsylvania, which is where she's visiting us from now. And she shares that home with Mr. Lucy, who I just got to see for a little bit, and their obnoxious cat, Cleo. When she's not spending her hours crafting her heartbreaking heroes and kick ass heroines, Lucy can be found on the couch, in the kitchen, or at the gym. She hopes to someday write from a sailboat, oceanfront condo, or tropical island with reliable Wi-Fi. Yes. Thank you for being with us, Lucy. You've had a whirlwind of like the last few years. You must be exhilarated and exhausted at the same time.
That is a good way of putting it. Yes, I am both of those things at
Right?
all times.
Oh my gosh. So I always like to start and ask our authors just a little bit about themselves, their childhood, where did they grow up, and what role did books play in your life? I mean, obviously that's in your bio a little bit, so tell us a little bit about what that was like.
My mom is actually a retired middle school and high school librarian.
Yeah.
So I know. So libraries are very near and dear to my heart. And our family was huge into books. I remember we would read at the dinner table all the time. Before I even knew my alphabet, I would carry a notebook around with me and write scribbles in it because I just wanted to have my own written words down on a page somewhere.
Oh my God.
My parents would read aloud to us until we learned how to read ourselves. So, I mean, I've been into books since I was a baby. And when I was 13, that's when I started stealing my mom's romance novels off the shelf. So I didn't know it then, but it was the beginning of a career.
Isn't that great? I used to steal my mom's books too. I think that's so telling about, when you read as a librarian, like I always, when I work with kids, I notice they always want to read up. They want
Yeah.
to read something a little bit, edgy. And some parents, you have to be careful with that. But I think we still embrace that as adults. So I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
oh no, that's all right. I think as long as you're reading, that's amazing.
absolutely, absolutely. So did you want to be I mean, were you thinking about writing always? I know writing was, did you think you'd be an author? Did you imagine you'd be a full-time writer? I mean,
Um,
that's
I
great.
I thought that I was going to be Lois Lane. So
Ah,
I went to school for journalism and I fully planned to become a reporter for a newspaper.
mm,
And I made it through college, got my bachelor's degree, and realized it was not a good fit for me. I like the happily ever afters.
right.
And apparently the news doesn't come with nearly as many of those.
No, that really is like the reality of journalism and compared to your stories is, the complete opposite, right?
Mhm.
It's especially journalism today. Were you working in journalism at all?
I did. I knew right away that when I was going to college, I worked as a copy editor for my hometown newspaper. And when I was a teenager, I actually wrote like a regular humor column for the newspaper. So I liked doing that and I didn't mind the copy editing. But I realized really quickly that the news made me feel out of control. It made me feel like all of these bad
Ah,
things were happening and I couldn't fix anything. So when I graduated, I took a job as a proofreader for an advertising firm. So I
mhm.
felt like it was kind of sort of a little bit related to my degree.
Yeah.
And that's what I ended up doing for like 8 years. But I did work for our paper down here in Harrisburg for 2 years, actually. I was in their custom publications department, which was actually fun. It was all of the little newspaper inserts and magazines that they put out. So it was like
Yeah.
happy, fun things. And I
Right.
really enjoyed that. But that was really as close to Lois Lane as I actually got in real life.
Yeah. Now, I was watching some interviews with you from a while ago, and one of them you mentioned a career with a very conservative accounting firm and some karma that happened. Because when I said instant, right, success, that kind of seemed to unfold 5 years ago for you. I think it was maybe,
It
right? Or
was
six when
it
the
was back
Amazon.
in 2015. So
Oh, so it
oh
was
gosh, I
even
guess like
more than that.
8 years.
I know I can't with how fast time goes. But can you share that story for those who might not know, because that's such a good
Sure.
story.
It's so wild. So I was working as a marketing director for an accounting firm, a small family-owned firm in the town that I live in. And I honestly didn't know what I was doing. I was learning on the fly, and it quickly became apparent that it was not a great fit, but I was determined. I was like, I'm going to make this work. I am an adult. Adults have jobs. They don't have to love them. They go to these jobs and do these things. So I tried so hard, but I was writing I wrote a romance novel in the evenings when I was not at work. And so my first book came out in March of 2015, and I kept it a secret because I was, I just had a feeling. I was like, I don't think they're going to like that I'm doing this on the side. And so I kept it a secret. And then I wrote my second book, Nights and Weekends, and it was getting ready to come out. And I had finally confided in a couple coworkers that was my hobby. And it turned out that one of my coworkers had actually read my first book without knowing that I wrote it. And I was like, oh gosh, this is such a small company. This is definitely going to come out. Somebody is going to tell one of the bosses. So I was like, I would much rather they hear it from me first. So I had several bosses, but I went to the female boss, and I just knocked on her door, and I was like, hey, I just wanted to let you know I have this hobby. I write romance novels on the side, and my second one's coming out this week. And she's like, oh, good for you. That's nice. That's great. And I was like, oh, whew, so relieved.
So
That,
supportive.
that was the Monday. And then Wednesday, they call me into the conference room, all of the bosses. And I did not see it coming. I feel so silly for not having seen it coming. But they basically said, you have until December to find a new job. Your position's being eliminated. This is it. I was heartbroken.
Of
Not
course.
because I loved the job, but I had a plan. I was going to work there for 5 years, and I was going to save every dime I could until I had a whole year's salary saved up. And then I was going to leave that job, and I was going to give myself a year to see if I could make it as a full-time author. And I was like, I have to quit writing. I have to start working on my resume. I have to get another real job. I was so heartbroken. And I left the conference room, and I went back to my office, and I called my husband, Tim, and I told him what happened. And I'm like, I'm so upset. And he's like, this is the best thing that has ever happened to you. And I didn't believe it. But the very next day, my second book came out. And within 2 weeks, it hit #1 on Amazon in the Kindle store. And I was able to actually leave that job before the deadline for me to be fired.
That's great.
And I was able to become a full-time author because the advance that I made on my earnings for that first month were my entire annual salary.
What karma. Sweet
It
karma.
it was crazy. And I mean, I
Isn't that
still,
great? You pursued what you wanted to do, right? And I mean, it didn't
yes,
stop you. You were at a mediocre job, but you still kept doing what you were doing, and it paid off. And I think that that's such an amazing story of just, the fortitude to stick with it.
it felt so good. I mean, to finally find the place that I fit,
Yeah.
every job I ever had, it was clear that I was not a good fit for it until I found romance novels. And then it's like I just finally found my place, and
Mm.
I'm so happy.
Oh, and that's great. Do you have like a bunch of writers that you work with, other romance writers? Like how do you I know some of the authors I've spoken to in the past, they do. They have like a group, they get together and meet, and even before their book has become or their books have become popular, this was something they always like to do, like as writing groups. Have you ever done anything like that, or is that something you do now?
No, I'm super territorial when it comes to my stories. Like nobody sees it until I am done and happy with it. Like no, but I don't share anything. I have a lot of author friends who use like alpha and beta readers. Like
Yes.
I have a friend who writes a chapter and then sends it off to like 20 alpha readers. And so it's like it's a collaboration. And I am the exact opposite. Like I'm like, nobody can see this is my precious.
So the reveal must be really anxiety inducing for you a little bit.
It is, because during the writing of it, I am not thinking about publishing it. I'm not thinking about the release. I'm not thinking
Really?
about the readers who are going to read it. All I do, it's my favorite part. Like it's just me and the story, and I am only putting on the page what I want, you know? And then when it comes time to start thinking about the release day, then I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know how other people are going to feel about this book.
Yeah,
But it's all part of my process. You know, severe anxiety is part of writing a book, I guess.
of course. Of course. Was the second book harder than the first? How was that for you?
I feel like the second book came a little bit easier, and it was also like a probably a little more than twice the length of the first one. But there was just something about that story that um kind of flowed out of me.
Mm.
I do think that I don't think writing books gets easier. I mean, I've written quite a few, and it's still it's still a marathon every time, you know. I'm never coasting to the finish line being like, oh, that was oh yeah, that's awesome, good job me. I'm like crawling across the finish line with broken fingernails, and I'm
Yeah,
dehydrated. And I think there's a lot of authors who do get who do find it easier, but I think it's also kind of the more you know, the higher your expectations you have for yourself. So
interesting.
as I'm telling these stories, you know, the more I learn about the craft of writing and storytelling, the better job that I want to do. So it takes me longer. I mean, it takes me, I used to write 4 books a year, and now I'm down to 2. But
Huh.
because some of them are huge.
They're huge. Yes, there is a lot in these books. Oh yeah. So is it exhilarating to write or is it exhausting? I asked that of what we the last person that we the last author I interviewed last month was William Landay, who wrote Defending Jacob, and his new book is All That Is Mine I Carry With Me. And it was 11 years between the two books. And so I asked him like and he was like, oh my God, it's so draining. And it's exhausting for me to write. Like it's the process that kind of drains all the life out of him. And then there's other authors that are like they feel refreshed after that story escapes them. Are you
Mm.
like that, or are you somewhere in the middle?
I'm both. When I'm
Okay.
actually writing the book every day, it is exhausting, because
Mm.
I have a really limited bandwidth mentally. You know, I have this much energy, and this is what I have for the day. And I put pretty much all of it into the story. So when I finish writing for the day, I don't have a whole lot left over. So it is really tiring. But when I finish that book completely, it is just the most exhilarating feeling. And it's that moment when I finish it and nobody else has seen it, nobody else knows it's done. You know, it's just me and
It's
that
all
book. And
yours.
it is like I have goosebumps just thinking about that moment, because
Huh.
it's just this incredible moment of pride that I have in myself just for completing the task, and just for
Mm.
getting that story out and then being happy with it. So it's crazy. I mean, I think it's a little bit addicting, you know, that feeling, but thank goodness it takes me so long to get to that point.
No, that's great. one of our guests just asked, what's the titles of that first and second book that you're talking about? I think the
Oh,
first one's Pretend You're Mine.
the very first book was Undercover Love. That was in
Oh, okay.
2015, and then the second one was Pretend You're Mine in October of 2015.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
that's so cool.
And you have, when you look, I've printed out because I can't keep track of all of your series
I
within,
can't either.
yeah, within titles within the series that you have, and then you have some standalones too,
Mm-hmm.
correct? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love a
And
good standalone.
yeah. And I mean, there's so many here. How many novels so far? Is it over 30?
It's over 30. Yeah, I don't know. I lost track at 30
I
and
think
now
it's 33 is
yeah.
what I was
Well,
trying to look it up. Yeah.
because I just finished the first draft of another one, so that's not coming out for a while. So it's like, does that count? Does that not count? But yeah, I think it's like somewhere
It
around
counts.
33 that are published and out in the world. I
Yes.
think.
And let's talk a little bit about the knock 'em out, because that's what we didn't know what to focus on, and that's some of the more recent stuff. Um, so for those who might not have read the book, can you give a quick little synopsis of the first book?
I can
And
try.
okay,
I mean, I
it's
shoved a whole lot of.
522 pages, so
I know there's so much in there. Yeah,
but a
I
little teaser, so we get some more
um,
readers out there.
well, the heroine is Naomi, and she actually just ran away from her wedding, and she is riding to the rescue of her estranged twin sister, who is, spoiler alert, bad news all the time,
Mm.
always bad news. And so Naomi ends up in this tiny town in Northern Virginia called Knockemout. And she is desperate for coffee. She drove all night. She still has like her hair up for her wedding and daisies in it and everything, but she's in like a workout outfit. And she goes into a coffee shop and asks for coffee, and there is her mugshot behind the register saying, "Do not serve this woman." Well, it's her sister that she's not supposed to serve, and this man comes running in and starts yelling at her, telling her he told her never to come back here. It's a meet cute. It's a meet yell.
It's a meat, yeah. I like the
Yes,
intensity.
it's a meat yell. I like getting creative with those. The hero Knox is small town entrepreneur. He owns a bar and a barber shop, and he's this bearded, grumpy guy. He loves his cabin and his dog, and that's it. He doesn't want to be bothered by anyone else or anything else. Hates drama. He hates people,
Yes.
and he is definitely not into high maintenance women, but he can't seem to leave Naomi alone, especially after he has a front row seat to her discovering that she has a niece she never knew about, and that her evil twin sister left the niece in her care. So Naomi's in this town, this tiny town with no job, no place to stay, and now she has an 11-year-old niece to take care of. And Knox decides that he's going to help her out and get her out of his hair.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually and then that's really in the first few pages. And then that's when the story really
It's
takes off.
literally the first two chapters of the book, and
Yes.
it goes from there.
It goes from there. That's the setup. And you have to love these characters. And that the first scene made me you can really picture it in your head like a movie almost, that needing the coffee is so, exactly how we would feel like, just please find me some coffee. Like you could only focus on that one thing. So I love that about Naomi and her coffee. And I know that this is the first in what's now just a trilogy. And with so many titles and overlapping characters, because in those three they do overlap. How on earth do you keep track of everybody's origin stories and their who's where and when to bring one in and where they cross, and how does that work for you?
I keep a really extensive, I call it a Bible. So every book
Okay.
that I write gets its own Bible, and then the series have like a Bible that's all the book Bibles smushed together, basically. So it's every character's name, age. I include a description of how they sound because I send that to the audio narrators.
Yes.
How their physical appearance, their personalities, the car they drive, the job they have, the pets they have, family history.
That's great.
I know
Oh my gosh.
it's this insane mega spreadsheet, but it makes writing series a lot easier. But I still there's just so much happening in these books. They have such lengthy timelines that I'm just waiting for somebody to come back and be like, hey, I found a problem here.
I know. And you've got the fan base that would absolutely, they're obsessed.
They would totally find it.
Somebody will do that. So this series and this original story in the series, how did this story come to you? How did you know when it was time? Was this like ruminating in your head and you were like, okay, it's time to put this on paper now? Like, how did this story come to you?
It has a really dumb origin story. Every time Mr. Lucy, that's what I called him. Every time Mr. Lucy and I would get in the car, I always plug my phone in and start a playlist. So every time we were in the car, I would be playing other music and I would scroll to the Jake Owens song Down to the Honky Tonk. Because I just loved singing it and it's hilarious. And there's a line in there that really stuck with me. It's like, it got a dog named Waylon and a driveway that needs paving. And that right there, that was the first inkling I had for Knox and this town, this story. This whole series basically came from a line in a country
Isn't
song
that
that
great? That's actually awesome origin story, I think. That's amazing. That's amazing. Are any of the characters based on you or people you know or friends?
Everybody gets like a little piece of me. Like Naomi is a huge people pleaser, and I am a recovering people pleaser. And so I was able to write to those people pleasing tendencies really easily because of past experience and everything. But I was also able to see her through the eyes of other characters who want what's best for her.
Right.
So that was definitely fun to explore on the page. I think a lot of times writing for authors can be therapy.
Yeah, I can
I
imagine.
certainly work through a lot of stuff. The other thing that happened while I was writing this book is I lost a dear friend of mine very suddenly on the day that I started this book.
Oh.
And so it took me 6 months to finish this story because I was so lost in grief, I think, and that really affected how I was writing. So I kept rewriting and rewriting until I kind of found a path through both the book and the grief. And when I finally finished that book, I actually felt like I surfaced. I felt like I had worked something out inside me too. And, it was, the book means so much to me.
That's
so
really
much.
That's great. What year did you write the book?
I wrote it in 2021.
Okay.
I started it, I think, June 2nd, 2021.
So it was also right, at the pandemic time too. I mean, I'm always fascinated with the authors who wrote books during that time because a lot of them do say that and obviously you had other things happening in your life, but their writing had changed a lot in the way they wrote, or their process changed a little bit, just either because it had to, because maybe there were outside people and now they had to be inside people. But books that came out during that time, I'm always a little fascinated with how authors changed. Was there anything that changed for you in your writing after
I was very lucky during that time period because I'm very easily affected by things around me, especially if it's upsetting, especially if my people are hurting or sick or sad. That really affects my ability to write, and I can't. So during the pandemic, I had already been a full-time author working from home. I am basically an amateur hermit, so I'm very comfortable not leaving my house for long periods of time. So that part of the pandemic was great for me. Like I was like, I can do this. I can do this all year. But I had to stop allowing the news near me. You know,
Yeah.
I had to stop. If I was going to write these lovely, happy rom-coms and find my way to a happily ever after, I have to be very careful what I allow in my space. So it's like,
Yeah, that's
you
so
know how
true.
they say you are what you eat? I think me personally as a writer, I am what I consume. So it's not just like the tuna salad sandwich I had. It is also like, what news articles did I read today? What videos did I come across on TikTok or Instagram or whatever? You know, what am I consuming and how is that affecting me? So I had to go in a really strict direction of protecting myself so I could get back into a happy writing space. Because
Yeah.
I think I lost like a month of writing time during the lockdown because it was such a crushing experience just to see so many people suffering.
And you know, your books are so lighthearted, and like especially this one, like it has moments that are just so funny, and like to think, to be able to do that and swing out of that, what we were going through at that time, and even with your journalism background, like I think like, oh my gosh, like did you want to, like you could have easily dove into that
Yeah.
rabbit hole, right?
Oh
But you
yes. Yeah.
didn't. You came into this really happy ending thing, and I you know, I commend you for that. um you know, one of the things we talked about when we've been discussing this book is the title of the first book, Things We Never Got Over, and actually all of the titles of the books, but Things We Never Got Over was a bit of a topic of discussion because, you know, the we to some of us meant even us as readers, right? Like, ah,
Bingo.
we won. Got it. No, it actually is a very thought-provoking title. And, you know, obviously the characters have a lot that they haven't gotten over, but, you know, we didn't really get over the characters, some of the stuff that happened in the book too, and us. And, you know, that's how I got to that, you know, pandemic thing. But, you know, did you select the title? Are you
And
selecting your own title, or do you get
I
recommendations? How does that work? Yeah, to you.
I choose my own titles and a lot it back at that time, I didn't have a paperback publisher, which I do now. So everything has to happen on a much different timeline. But I would finish a book and still not know what the title was. Like my other friends, some of them have the title and design a cover and write the blurb before they even start the book. And I'm like, how do you,
Oh
that's
no.
magic. Me, I'm like, I don't even know what this book is about until I start editing the first pass. But
Right.
yeah, it usually I have a couple of ideas floating around and I will take a day or two and just sit down with a notebook and start brainstorming by hand. But this one, Things We Never Got Over, that was the only contender that I had. And that
Yeah,
cover
great.
was also the
Yes.
only contender that I had. So
Yeah.
when the designer put both of those together, you know, she chose the perfect font and everything. We
Oh,
didn't make
without a
any
doubt.
changes. We were like, that is it. That is
I
perfection.
I happen to love daisies, and I just, as soon as I had this book cover, the blue and the daisies, I mean, it's just such a beautiful book to look at on the shelf. Um, so, and then exactly that, the font of the almost like
Mhm.
a watercolor font. It's just, it's really great. So,
It's so cool because like the title by itself can be really heavy,
yeah.
but the book itself is so much happier than that. So the art had to balance the title and it's kind of like the book's a rom-com, but it also deals with addiction issues and homelessness
Mhm.
and unhealed family scarring and trauma, you know. So there's a lot of heavy lifting in there, but there's also a lot of humor and heart. And I don't know, I think that's kind of a reflection of how I see life. You know,
Mm,
there's a lot of heaviness. We all see it, we all deal with it, but there is so much of these little pockets of happiness and just beauty and love. There's so much out there that it's so good to remind yourself that the world is not dark.
and that's what a lot of your readers say about why they love your book so much, is that really make them feel happy. And I think coming out of the times that we had, and like you said, you just sometimes, and I want to talk to you a little bit about book talk and TikTok. And you're right, we are consumed with a lot of negativity in social media. Book talk is nice because when a lot of the books that we're seeing are books that are feel good. I mean, there's a lot of books that are not so feel good, but some of these really happy rom-commy books are out there, and I think it says a lot about the state of how we feel and what we want to consume more of. And I see it here in the library. People love, we just developed a whole romance section. We've kind of moved away from just alphabetizing by author's
That's
name, and
so
we have a
cool.
romance section and a historical fiction section, and like, yeah, and the
That's
romance section is
awesome.
huge, and it's people just go right to it. And of course your books are there. And I think it's kind of interesting because it says a lot about readers now. And you mentioned that you're on TikTok, obviously, and your book became really your books became very successful even after the publishing of them
Mhm.
because of that. How do you feel about TikTok and all the attention that you got on there? Like, that's such a unique space right now for books.
I'm super removed from uh my reputation on TikTok because I don't really see, I try not to see anything because my TikTok feed is mostly like men being surprised with puppies and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So the TikTok phenomenon was all in the hands of these young female content creators who picked a book up and fell in love with it. And it is so exciting to me to see industries change because they are actually listening to these young women who are with, they have this influence because they are actually passionate and authentically excited about these stories. I mean,
Yes.
they picked that book up out of on their own, and either fell in love with it or they hated it, but they all went on TikTok to talk about it. And
It's true.
it blows my mind that a bunch of these 20 something women have revitalized the print industry. I mean, everybody is reading print again, and it's so exciting to see. I'm in awe of them, and I'm so grateful to them. And it's really exciting to watch them discover other books and other authors and keep propelling these people to the top. It's so cool.
It is. I mean, as being in the library world for years, I can tell you that I've never seen reading as pleasurable of an activity as I have in the last 5 to 7 years, but more so since, the
Mhm.
last 5 years, it's become, especially with, like you said, the 20 somethings and younger people, but even older folks come in and ask for your books. And, the other authors who are had books before and no one ever knew them, and then all of a sudden their wonderful books are out there because, like you said, someone chose to talk about it and to talk
Yeah.
about how it made them feel. Colleen Hoover is one that we hear about all the time, but there's been so many others, and it's just amazing, and it's changed the whole way books are. And I kind of, I love it sometimes because I want people to, like you said, pick up other books. Like I say, oh, well, if you loved that author,
Mhm.
this is what you should try. Some people don't want to. They're like, nope, only this one,
Only this
nobody else.
one. You better
But
write fast then.
but you know what? When you open up the reading pleasure reading again to someone, it becomes, most people are like, just want more of it. We become like very addicted to the books, which is great. Um, so how much further will you stay with the Knock 'em Out series? And how do you ever know when it's time to end with a series? Or do you? Or maybe you
This
don't.
one, I usually have a pretty good idea of what I want to accomplish with the series. This one,
Okay.
Things We Never Got Over, started out as a standalone. It was just going to be one book.
Oh, it could never be with that
I
cast of
know.
characters.
I
It
know.
can't.
It very quickly turned into two books because very early on, those of you who read the book know that Knox gets into a fist fight with his brother Nash
Yes.
in the driveway. And as this fight scene was happening, it's clear they have so much history and everything. And I make this sound like I don't outline. I totally outline.
Yeah.
But things surprise me in the writing. So during this fight scene, these brothers who are obviously kind of estranged but still have a lot of feelings for each other are beating the crap out of each other. I was like, well, I need to know who Nash is. He gets a story. He totally
Yeah.
gets a story. And then it was further on in the book, and I did not plan for this character. And Lucian appears, and he is the childhood best friend
Love.
of both of the brothers. And he walks onto the page and takes one look at my librarian heroine for book 3. And I was
Love.
like, well, now it's a trilogy. So
Yeah.
it's done. It's
Okay.
just going to be 3 books. I did write a pretty extended bonus epilogue for the 3rd one. So you get to see everybody more than 10 years in the future.
Oh, that's so cool.
But yeah, this one, it's done. This one's done.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I love the covers on all the books too, not just this one, but the whole series are so pretty. Like I could just make a whole display with just those. Um, so what as an author do you think makes a really good story?
Character.
Mm,
It is the person that you are connecting with, not necessarily what's happening to them. It's there's some kind of magic that happens when you can connect with a character and things start to play out in your head like a movie, but you're reading a book. That's the magic.
yeah.
I think it's all in the character. And I think for me personally, I need that character to grow. I need them to have a really satisfying character arc, and I need them to end up in a better place than where they began.
Hmm, I like that. You mentioned that you did your own editing on this too. And with 500 plus pages, did you edit out much
Oh,
out of things we never got over? And if so, can you share? Like, was there any tidbit that like you had to part with, but you were like, I wish I could have left it in?
I pretty much put everything into things we never got over. I don't
Okay.
remember. I'm usually a pretty judicious writer. So I don't have like a whole stockpile of bonus scenes. I do have scenes that I wanted to write that I didn't write because I
Okay.
couldn't make them fit. Um,
Mm,
yeah, so uh I think with things we never got over, there was nothing floating around. There was something that I really wanted to add to Lucian's book, but it's my longest book ever. And there was literally no room for it. I could not cram it between the covers. So
that's great.
there was something that I really wanted to do in that book that I couldn't. So now I'm like, okay, well, maybe if I get like a TV or movie deal, then I can have them put it.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's a great way to think. I love that. You mentioned character. Was there a character you loved writing more than the others? Like a favorite one you like to sit down and write the most?
I definitely loved Waylay,
Yeah.
the Naomi's niece. She's 11 and turns 12 in the series, but she's a lot more mature for her age because she has been responsible for herself for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved watching her go from this closed off, hard shelled girl to somebody who like hugs her aunt and like isn't afraid to tell adults what she thinks. And she just feels so comfortable and safe in her new life that
Mm-hmm.
I loved that. I also loved writing Lucian. He was so dark and mysterious.
He is.
So much fun. And I think Nash, actually, I had a really good time writing him because he's the hero of the 2nd book. He has this heart of gold. He has this like hero complex. He feels like it's his job to protect his family, his town, everybody he cares about.
Yeah.
And in his book, he is physically wounded, and that leaves a mark on him mentally. And so I really loved being able to explore that aspect of him. And I also really like when a good guy is also like naughty.
a bad guy.
Yeah.
I know we
Yeah.
didn't even talk about the steamy scenes. But maybe this goes into the next question. So for readers who are just getting to know your books and getting to know you as an author, like what should they expect if they branch out into some of your other series and more into the Knock 'em Out series? What should they expect to get from you?
Well, you should be warned that there's always swearing and there's always sex.
There is.
So
Yes,
just you're
indeed.
forewarned. I try to include like a really good swear word on the first 2 pages just to scare people off. Um, just in case they don't get the clues in the blurbs. But yeah, so there's always that. I think there's always more humor than what you expect. Um, so there, I think, and the secondary characters, that's always very important to me in my stories. I want every
Yeah.
secondary character to feel like it's a real person that you would run into at the grocery store. Maybe a real weird person you'd run into at the grocery store, but they feel real to me. So that's kind of like my formula. And then I just mix and match with things. Like I have another series, the Riley Thorne series, which is
Yeah.
yellow cover up here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very different from Knock 'em Out, but also not that different. So it's the same couple. They are solving mysteries together. The hero is a private eye and the heroine is a reluctant psychic. And they have a bunch of elderly roommates who are always getting into trouble. There's always dead bodies. So it's totally different, but it still has the vibe of the small town, the zany characters. It's just this is more kind of like slapstick humor. If you've ever read like a really dark book that like hurt your heart and you're just not over it, if you pick up something like Riley Thorne, that's like the palate cleanser
It
for
is.
like you're gonna laugh and you're gonna feel better.
Yes. Oh, I love that. A palate cleanser. That's great. And it's true because there are some books out there that just like, oof,
They
you can't
destroy you.
recover. These will definitely make you laugh. The banter back and the quick wit of Naomi. I mean, it was great. There were times that I was really laughing out loud, which was great. So you mentioned movie streaming. Any chance we'll see some of your books in this?
I hope so. I
Yeah,
think with the writer strike and the
of course,
actor strike, like I just want to fair pay for the people doing the work.
of course.
I mean that would be great to see. So I have my fingers crossed for all of them, and
Hmm.
hopefully they're fairly compensated, and hopefully then we can just turn all of my stuff into books and movies.
Yeah, and pick our favorite cast that we'd
Right?
like and dream. I see people think about who they want to play this one and that one and post pictures. And I
Oh,
just
I love when
that.
people do that.
That was great. Yeah, that was so great. And you know what else came up as a comment too that I liked was that your characters were such a range of age. It was everyone was in there. Naomi's parents is in this book. It was great because there was someone for everyone. Waylay, as you mentioned, and it just was great. And who doesn't love an evil twin? I mean, that was just fantastic. Um, so what is the last, I always like to ask, what's the last great book you read? Or really good, or couldn't put down?
Oh my gosh, I'm reading The Princess Bride right now. I've never read
Have
it.
you?
I've watched the
Oh,
movie a million times, but I've
yes.
never read the book. Loving it. Um, the last book that I really couldn't put down. Oh, I just did a reread of Leanne Moriarty's The Hypnotist's Wife.
Oh, I never
I
read that
love,
one.
she's so good.
I've read a lot of her stuff. Is that one good?
It's
I'm gonna
my
write that
favorite.
down.
It's my favorite of hers. It's like a really subtle story. It's a woman who works as a hypnotherapist,
Yeah.
and she falls in love. But the man she falls in love with has a stalker. And so Leanne tells the story through the eyes of the heroine and the eyes of the stalker. And she's brilliant. She's amazing. I can't put her books down.
Yeah, her stuff is great. She does put like a little humor in there sometimes, like dark.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one I'll have to give I'll have to look for that. That's
Let me know
fun.
what
That
you think, because
I will.
that's
I
my
will.
favorite of hers. I love that book.
And what about guilty pleasure books? Because your books
Mm,
are almost guilty pleasures for
heck
some,
yeah.
you know? I mean, I don't like to like trivialize that way because it's not.
Mhm.
Every book is a good book for whatever mood you're in. But do you have anything, so like you said, you reread? Do you like tend to reread as a guilty pleasure, like
I do.
visit?
I definitely I reread. If I get into a book slump, I will do a reread of something that I know I love. One of my favorite books to reread is Julie Garwood's The Bride,
Mm-hmm.
one of my all-time favorites. Um, oh my, it's not really a guilty pleasure, it's just a pleasure. I've been reading the ACOTAR series by Sarah J. Maas, but I
Okay.
can't read them while I'm writing a book because I will not write my book and I will just read hers, and they're huge. So then I will just be so it's literally taking me forever.
Yeah.
I just finished the third one a couple weeks ago, and I've been texting author Jill Shalvis because she was reading the first book, and I'm like, oh, I had to keep my mouth shut about everything.
No
But
spoilers. Yeah.
yeah, so that I've been enjoying those, and then yeah, I don't know. I read as much as I can, mostly at night right before I go to bed, but I love Tessa Bailey. Her books
Yeah.
are so much fun.
She was our hot and steamy author last summer.
Oh,
It
that's
was
awesome.
great. Yes, yes. And Talia Hibbert too, we had, who's also great. Yeah, from the
Oh,
UK. Yeah, that was fun too.
oh, that's awesome.
Uh-huh. They were terrific. Are there any we've talked a little bit about subject matter, things that were in your book that were a little heavier topics, like domestic abuse and some things like that. Are there subjects you wish, and not necessarily bad ones, but are there subjects you wish were written about more often?
I never really thought about it too much from my own standpoint. I don't have kids, but a lot of my couples end up they don't automatically get married and have a baby. A lot of my couples adopt. And I just thought, I always think adoption is beautiful, and that's why I write so much about it. I love the idea of found family. And I was amazed by how many readers who would reach out who said that they dealt with a lot of fertility issues, and that took them forever to get pregnant, or they never did, or they decided to take a beat and really thought, you know what, maybe we're going to adopt now. And I wish that the happily ever afters, they are out there, but I wish it was more prevalent that infertility happens, and there are still ways to find your family. There are still ways to live your happily ever after,
Yeah.
even though it might not follow the standard prescription path.
Well,
So
I love that the happily ever afters are breaking boundaries and really, everybody's starting to see more of their own lives in these happily ever after stories, which is
yeah,
really kind of nice. So, um, and then I know you write like crazy as a full-time writer. So what are you working on now? You kind of mentioned it a little bit in the beginning.
yeah, I am.
Anything you could share with us?
I just drafted Riley Thorne 4.
Ah,
So I am going back and doing so before anybody ever sees it, I write the draft until
okay.
I think it's done. And then I go back to the very beginning and I start rereading and editing and rewriting. So nobody sees it until I finish that pass. And I'm like, okay, this is a real book now. I think it's good enough to let somebody else look at it. So I am in the
A lot of pressure.
reading and editing. It is, but I thrive on that. I think deadlines and the fear of rejection.
Well, obviously it works for you. So, I mean, that's your process and it works really well. So, I think that's awesome. That's
It's
so great. We have time. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But I do want to kind of go through a couple of these lightning
oh,
round
I'm ready.
questions because they're really fun. So I'm going to put a minute down, but I might just ask you them all anyway.
Okay,
All right.
I'm ready.
Let's go. So, which character from your novels would you like to have a drink or coffee with? What's that?
I just whispered a swear word because I
Oh,
immediately thought of Marley Cicero from Rock Bottom Girl,
okay.
and her best friend Vicky, because Vicky is hilarious.
Awesome. And what do you like to do to relax? How do you unwind?
I love to lay by the pool.
Mm.
We got a pool, and I've always wanted one. And I love to rewatch TV shows that I've already watched.
And that's our next question. What shows do you binge?
Okay. All right. Ted Lasso, number one
Love,
all-time
we're big Ted
favorite.
Lasso
Love,
fans.
love, love. Shrinking, also on Apple, also by
Isn't it great?
the showrunner and Brett Goldstein, Bill
Love
Lawrence,
it.
Brett Goldstein. Amazing. The Diplomat on Netflix. One season out, it's Carrie Russell. It is incredible. The showrunner is
Okay.
Deborah Kahn. She is a genius. I'm rewatching it right now. It's like intrigue and politics in the UK,
And I
and
like her. She's
oh,
great.
amazing. And it's so funny. It's hilarious.
Really? Okay.
Highly
All
recommend.
right. And then when it comes to movies, do you prefer a theater or your couch?
I prefer my couch 100% of the time. We did discover some theaters have the recliners, so I like reserving my space. I like having the recliner. I really like it when they're heated. And we actually just saw Barbie last weekend in the theater, and I loved it.
Did you love it? I
I
went.
loved it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was Mr. Lucy's birthday weekend. Poor guy. For his birthday, he got my favorite meal for his birthday meal. And then I made him go see Barbie at the beach.
What a
And
guy.
like I was so impressed because I knew I was gonna love it, but I'm going there with this big burly bearded guy, and I was like, you have to be a super secure man just to walk in the theater, let alone to enjoy this movie. And I picked a good one, you guys.
Yeah. It was a good one. I have to agree. We're over a minute, but I'm going to ask you one more question
Keep going,
before
keep
we
going.
go. What would your readers never expect to know about you?
Well, they know a lot about me.
They do.
I think they would find it really strange to that I am literally just writing the first draft of the stories just for me. Like I'm not thinking about publishing it, or I'm not thinking about the reviews that it's going to get, and I'm not worried about somebody's going to say this or somebody said this before. It's literally just what I would want to read on the page. And it's probably a really dangerous game to play, but
It's great. I think that's great. Do you ever write those first few pages and then kind of like give up? Like, nope, it's not going to happen.
I honestly don't have any unfinished drafts sitting around, like
That's
I
so
think
cool.
it's the journalism major in me that makes me complete the story. Like, and if
Yeah.
it's not working, then I will tear it apart, take it down to the studs, and rebuild, until it's something that resembles a story.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's great. That's so great. Well, we went over our minute, but who cares? Those were
That's
great
all right.
answers. And
But I have a couple more TV shows real quick that
yeah,
I always
please.
binge. Arrested Development,
Love it.
mostly like seasons 1 through 4, and then Parks and Rec and Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
So you know what? I love this. This explains why the banter and the humor in your books, you obviously really do enjoy like that type of stuff.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
comes naturally to you. You can see that.
Well, and I love that the banter kind of represents a relationship, like if you can have these quick-witted exchanges with somebody, you have a spark, you have a history, you get each other on a different level. So I love
Yeah,
what that represents.
that's so great. Ah, well, I mean, this was so awesome. The hour just went like this. Like I can't believe we're done. I didn't even get to ask you all about being an independent publisher and all that stuff, but we'll do that another time. We'll have to meet up again. But yeah, this was so great. On behalf of everyone who was here and who will be watching as it's recorded, I want to thank you for sharing your time. I know how much, it is to give up your own time and come visit us virtually. We really do appreciate it. And thanks for meeting with our readers, Lucy. I look forward to all that you continue to dream up for yourself to read and then share with the rest of us. So it's great. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for
Really.
having me, Nadine. I just love talking about books to other book lovers.
And thank you for representing librarians and libraries the way you did in this one. This was
I'm
so
super
great. I
excited.
love Sloan and we look forward to more. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks, Lucy. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.